Alright, so the phase 5 at the end of turn 11, rearm any bombers, which will be basically just these dive bombers, and then clear the decks. So I'm kind of going to leave the planes where they are this time because it's going to be the same launch mode in the next turn. Although, since I'm rearming these dive bombers, I'll probably stand these torpedo bombers down and throw in some dive bombers. Because now we've got a naval battle, ship versus ship, that is looming that could doom the U.S. So we're going to have to attack some more Japanese ships. However, I could not find anything in the rule book about Midway Island being invaded and what happens to these two, the seaplane base and the air base. So I'm going to assume they're very small islands. This isn't like the Philippines islands, you know, or Okinawa or Iwo Jima. So I think we'll just make those non-effective now. The patrol aircraft that are in the air are going to be good until they fail and have to return. Then they've got nowhere to return and they're just gone. Well, the B-17s won't have anywhere, but these PBYs can land in the water, and at least you can rescue the crew that way, I guess. The U.S. carriers, they can use their torpedo bombers as recon planes as well, so it's not like they will not have an option to do recon. It'll just be in a different form. So let's go forward with turn 12. And victory conditions have changed. Japan 5 now, US 2. Command tokens have not changed. Japan cannot do reinforcements. The sea zone is still occupied. The carrier ops. So there's nothing that needs to land, so we're going to launch. I'm going to change this out here for more dive bombers. I don't think we need any fighters, but you know what? I probably should. Well, I've got four fighters going up, because Japan could easily send these fighters to cover the ships that are available in the mid-ocean there, mid-map I should say. So let's, like I said, I'm going to adjust that, trade out the torpedo bombers for dive bombers, and we should be good to go there. So landing aircraft, like I said, there was none to land. Oh, well, nope, that's plane landed last turn for Japan on that patrol aircraft, so it gets to come out this turn. Alright, so we'll stay with that and move over to the map for search operations. Alright, so we are at the conduct search operations. I still see a little bit of a glare from the light overhead, but I moved in my side lights to hopefully balance that out, but it still didn't do it. So I apologize for that. Japan's going to launch this patrol aircraft. This one will move to, and the U.S. Is no longer able to launch any as the Japanese have invaded Midway. You can see the troops down there. So it doesn't look good for Midway. It is a lost cause at this point. Now it's just a fact of saving the U.S. carriers. So we've got 2 patrol aircraft here, 2 here, and then 1 that's going to try and shadow. So we're going to come in here with 1, and he's going to fly 1. We're going to try and locate the carriers. The destroyer, who cares about? We're going to fly this guy 2, because we don't really care too much about that carrier, but we're going to try and spot it with this in hopes of maybe catching that carrier and getting a victory point. Alright, so that is the end of that. Let's roll for some searches. Japan has none. The US is going to try and maintain shadowing of this battleship group, and they do. So we'll put that guy on the card there. He's going to try and spot this group. Fails, so we're just going to take him off the board. I'm not exactly sure how that works. This is only the second time in the games we've played that Midway actually got invaded. The carrier in the bottom, they failed, so they are off the board. So this game is going to wrap up here shortly. I don't see much need, because if Japan can move its ships closer and launch all these planes, doesn't look good for U.S. getting any more victory points other than maybe these cruisers or battleships, but we shall see. Alright, so token time. And the first one, it's almost always Japan. Alright, so we're going to fly our planes back to the carrier to provide combat air patrol. So the camera shut off in the middle of this segment, so just a quick recap. The tokens that were drawn were 3 Japanese. They moved the planes back to the carrier, they moved these cruisers north, and then they launched these planes into here for the fighters to protect the carrier on combat air patrol, and then the dive bombers can go attack the carriers next turn, assuming we have a successful spotting. The U.S. had 2 tokens, so they launched 2 flight groups into this battleship group here. So let's go to the battle board and see what happens. Alright, so here is the battle board set up. We've got the 2 battleships in the center. There are no cruisers, so this middle ring is undefended, other than these fighters can back up into certain zones depending on where the U.S. planes come from. So let's roll now to see where flight group Enterprise comes from. They come in at 5, which is right where they are. The Hornet, no, it's the Yorktown. They're green, so they come in at, and it's a leaner, so let's roll that again. It's out of the box. It is a 2, so they come in down here, and I'm just going to move just the green fighters so we know that they are coming in there. Alright, so the first round of combat is 1 fighter and 1 destroyer versus 5 dive bombers. Now, they're not going to drop their bombs there because they want to hit the battleship. And when we get to the battleship, they actually are the biggest, well, obviously the biggest thing on the board as far as damage, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So the destroyer gets 2 at 1 on the anti-aircraft, misses. And the fighter is at 5, and it hits. So we're going to lose 1 dive bomber. The 5 U.S. dive bombers, they get 5 dice at 1. And they get nothing. So that's the end of that battle. This battle here, in this first ring here, Japan has the same thing. 2 anti-aircraft shots at 1 and a fighter at 5. And they get a hit. So we're going to lose the torpedo bomber because it is the worst unit in the game, the U.S. Torpedo bomber. So that means we'll have 2 at 1 and 2 at 5. Here's the 2 at 5 for the fighters. They get 1, so Japan loses a fighter. And that'll be the end of that because they are not attacking that destroyer. So now Japan will go like this, and that to those sea zones. The U.S. will obviously come here with everything because they don't want to fight those fighters alone with those dive bombers. So now we come, Japan pulls all its fighters in here, and then the U.S. comes in here with all its attacks. And alright, so the battleships, they take 5, no they don't, let me look at that, they take 4 hits to sink, but they have heavy armor, so the first hit is ignored. So basically you need 5 hits. They have an anti-aircraft of 2 dice at 4, and their victory points are 3 each, so could get the U.S. back in the game here. So let's go with the anti-aircraft first from the battleships, and that'll be 4 at 4. They get 1 hit, so we're going to lose that last. You know what, at this point let's lose a fighter, because the fighter can't do anything to those ships. Alright, so Japan has 3 fighters at 5, and they get 1 hit, so we'll lose that fighter. Alright, so that means we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dive bombers and 1 torpedo bomber. The torpedo bomber attacks at a 2, I believe. Let me look at the chart here. No, they attack at a 3. But if they get a hit, they get to roll for a chance at a second hit. So they got a hit. So that will be the ignored hit. The second one is a miss. Alright, so that means they need 4 hits out of the 5 dive bombers, right? 2, 3, yeah, it's 4. There's 5 there. So they've got 5 dice at 8. And they need 4 hits to sink that one. And I'll be dang, they did it. So that battleship is gone. And that will give the U.S. 3 points. It is a tie game at 5. Alright, so we've put our units back on the board from the battleship engagement there. I've reduced the markers, fuel markers, because these all made attacks, so they have to go back next turn. My second camera up here has bit the dust again, so I want to try and get this game wrapped up tonight so I can get on to some other things. Of course, editing the video is going to take a while too, so I'm going to recap from here on out, which will start with turn 13. There wasn't any planes to land, so let me do turn 13 and then we'll do a recap. But what I want to point out here is a situation now. These planes will have to land next turn. These planes will have to land next turn. So 2 carriers will be recovering planes. These planes are not going to attack this turn. They're going to wait till those planes land. So if Japan can get some tokens and get more planes in the air, it could be a huge feast on these 2 carrier groups, and that will be the game. But it all depends on those stinking tokens and when you draw that. So I'll see you at the end of turn 13 and we'll see what the map looks like. Alright, so here is the end of turn 13. Let me grab my little pointer there. And the reconnaissance from the patrol aircraft was successful, and then they successfully found the Japanese carrier again. That's this group anyway. And then Japan was successful on this carrier, and this one is getting closer. Now when the tokens were drawn, unfortunately for the US, they only drew 1, launched their fighters. And remember, they have radar. That's why I launched the middle one first, because they can send these into any sea zone next to it to intercept. So if Japan attacks here, they can send them there. However, the other token drawn was the storm. So a storm squall has now protected the Yorktown from attack. Now the downside is these planes will all have to make a dice roll to see if they're destroyed upon landing in the storm. And then the other thing too is no one can launch from the storm, so they're going to have to move next turn. So basically they're taken out for a while, because if they move forward, they're still in the storm. All these would have to shift south, you know, taking time and, you know, allowing everything else to close. Japan only got 2 markers, and I wanted to get planes in the air from both carriers. These have all formed up into one group because they're all from the 2 carriers here. So I'll need 2 tokens for the aerial attack next turn. The other 2 tokens, I was hoping to move these ships all into this sea zone to combine up for a charge assault on whatever's left here. So no battles this turn. Next turn, if the tokens fall right, there will be a battle. The U.S. was unable to launch its fighters from the Hornet, so they'll try and do that again on next turn, which will be, oh, of course you always get the wrong one, turn 14. So what I'll do is, if this battle does happen on one of these, well, it'd have to be this carrier or this one from all these planes, then I will shoot the whole battle on the battle board, because that will be interesting more than pulling tokens out of a cup to watch anyway. So we'll see if there's a battle or at the end of 14, whichever comes first. Alright, so here is the setup. The U.S. Did not have enough destroyers to make the full ring, so that one is empty on the destroyer. Their fighters, they were able to go 2, 2, 2, and then 1 on the corners. They have a cruiser in each one of the 3 central boxes and 1 carrier in the middle. So let's roll to see where the Japanese come in at. The smaller flight group comes in at 12, so they come in on the other side. That'll be good for them, as they have the fewest fighters. And the second flight group comes in at 6, right up the middle. That is not good, because they're going to get maximum defense there in the middle. So for the first round of combat, we will do the 11-12 here, so this red and orange group. So we're going to have 6 at 1 and 2 at 5. So let's throw our 6 ones. Nothing. And our 2 5s. 1. So the fighter goes away, and then they get to fire back at 5. Miss the destroyer, and I need to get the U.S. sheet because their destroyers attack better on anti-aircraft, I believe. Yes, they are 2 at 2. And 2 12s, so that does not do any good there. Alright, so let's move to this next group here. So the U.S. has, well, we'll do the attackers first. So we've got 2, 4, so we got 4 fighters at 5. And they got 2 hits, so the U.S. planes are gone. So let's have the U.S. planes fight back at 5. They get a hit. So what will we lose? I think we'll lose a fighter from the yellow group here. I don't know why I'm choosing the yellow, but we are. Alright, so the anti-aircraft from the destroyer is 2 at 2, and then they rolled 2 11s. Okay, so now Japan moves. We'll move that over. The destroyers are done. I'll just put them back on the... So we'll move into this group here, and then this flight group can only go forward. So now the U.S. has to decide to dump 4 fighters in here, or 2 there and 2 here, or they could just skip and go over here for that final round. That's what they'll do to save them. So they're going to dump their fighters here so that they are not involved in battle. And there'll be an air battle and an anti-aircraft. So this here will just be anti-aircraft, but I gotta believe Japan's gonna attack that cruiser because the carrier has 4 hit points. Well, they have planes on the deck, so it only takes 3 hits to sink that carrier. So pretty sure they're gonna attack both those cruisers to get those victory points. So let's roll the anti-aircraft here first, and the cruiser is 2 at 3. So Oh, they missed. Alright, so this battle here, we've got 2 fighters at 5. Miss. And then we have 6 dive bombers at 1. Get nothing. Alright. Now the U.S. response is 2 fighters at 5. And they got an 8 and a 7. That's a failure. Then they got the anti-aircraft for nothing. Alright, so now the decision time is Japan's excuse me, dropping bombs on these cruisers. And I think bomb attacks against cruisers are -1. So that doesn't look good really now that I say that. We don't want to use our torpedo bombers on them because they'll be attacking at a 3. The dive bombers will attack at a 4. So I think we still try it because we only need 3 hits here. So we're going to have 3 of our dive bombers attack this cruiser. So I'm going to take the bomb off in this C zone. So that's going to be 3 at 4. Of course, they need 2 hits. That doesn't seem wise, does it? I think we won't. I don't think we'll spare any here, so we'll send him in. We'll attack this cruiser here with 3 torpedo bombers, because if they get a hit, they get a chance at a double hit. And then we'll take 2 dive bombers and we'll hope for the best on that last round. Alright, so we've got 3 torpedo bombers at 3, so we get 1 hit and it gets to roll again to see if it gets a second hit, and it does. So that's the advantage of the torpedo bombers. If they get a hit, they get to roll again. So 1 U.S. cruiser bites the dust. Just for grins, the dive bomber at a 4, that would hit too. So those planes are now out of the battle. They've dropped their bombs. They just go back. Alright, so everything else moves in. The U.S. now has 5 fighters. Alright, so was it the gamble of hitting that destroyer? Will it pay off? Or that cruiser, I mean. I maybe shouldn't have done that. Oh well. It's done now, so let's move in. Japan will have 2, 3, 4, 5. So they will have 5 at 5. Same thing the U.S. has. And that is, oh crap, 4. Well, let's lose the blue because that's what's being attacked. So that leaves just 1 U.S. fighter left. Alright. So now that's it for the aerial part of Japan's. Well, no, I guess I got all these ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 9. So here's 6 at 1. I just need 1 hit. There's nothing there. And the last 3, there's a hit. So U.S. loses all its planes. That is not good. U.S. has 2 fighters left on the whole game. So I think that's, if this carrier goes down, I think we'll call that game, because there is no way they can do anything without fighters. Their fighter cover is down. Alright, so the U.S. carrier, here's the anti-aircraft roll I hate the worst. They are 4 dice at 6. And I knew that going in. So let's see what happens. There's 1, 2. So we're going to lose 2 torpedo bombers. Oh, there's 2 in that stack, so we'll leave that one. We'll take this stack. They are off. I'm leaving this cruiser here for the victory point, so I remember. Alright, so here we are. The Japan is attacking the carrier, and they've got 1 torpedo bomber left, and it's got a hit at a 3. Misses. Alright, so 9 we'll do it in 3 waves. These are 5s. So here's the first wave. Nothing. Second wave. 1 hit. So we're going to take 1 plane off the deck, and we're assessing 2 damage. So they just need 2 hits to sink this dang thing, and I made a huge mistake, I think. Yep, carrier lives. I should have just sent everything on that carrier. There you have it. They do get a victory point for that, so that puts them in the lead at 6. And let's get these back on the board. So is that right? Out of the 9 attacks, I only got 1 hit? Man, that is bad. That's some bad rolling there. 9 dive bombers and 1 torpedo bomber, I got 1 hit. Unless I didn't roll that second or that third set. We'll just roll it just for grins and look at it later. Well, I would have got 1 more hit, so it wouldn't have sank it. Alright. Let's put all this back together and see what it looks like. So here's a look at the carrier boards at the end of turn 14 here. We got 2 damage here, so they're reduced to doing 3 planes at a turn. They only have 4. They only have 4 planes left. The Hornet is down to 6 planes, and the Yorktown is down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 planes. Only 2 fighters remain. I guess I should put a fighter there. So we know. So only 2 fighters remain for the U.S. Japan, this was all, these landed this turn. I didn't put the recovery markers on there. Anyway, so they can launch 3 up here with the damage. They can launch all those, and this carrier here can launch the 2 that it has left. No, they have to land. The fighters have to land this next turn. But as we look over here at the board, we got this group here with 2 damage. These all have to return to their carrier. Probably 2 tokens that Japan gets will move both those ships here. Both those ship groups, they'll combine here. If I get a third, these destroyers are coming up. The carrier's got to land those fighters, so they can't do anything. So that's going to put a press of a naval battle. Most likely we want to get into this group if we can. The U.S. being in a pickle with this storm, the Yorktown cannot launch planes. If it goes forward, it still can't launch planes. So this plane has to shift, or this carrier group has to shift. This carrier group has to shift. This carrier group has to shift. Well, that's all 3 tokens, and the U.S. hasn't gotten 3 tokens in 1 turn for a very long time. So I don't know that that's going to happen. So they are closing in the carrier groups for Japan. They've got all their planes here, so it's going to be 2 turns before they land, and then 2 before they come back. But I think this naval battle makes the decision easier, I think, for the U.S. To bow out of this game. In theory, what they should do is take all their carriers and run them off the board and run away from this situation. That's the prudent move at this point before you end up losing a carrier and maybe some more cruisers. So the game will end with Japan at 6 and the U.S. at 5 victory points. So that is the Battle of Midway. Each game really has been different. I think there was 2 games where the U.S. Just swamped the Japanese carriers and destroyed them, like around turn 6 or 7, and then those games ended pretty quick. But for the most part, most of these games are drawn out. I mean, it's 12, 14 turns on this one. Now we did have a lot of short turns there in the middle, where the token was, the medal token was drawn early from the cup and ended the turn. So US, like I said, US 5, Japan 6, they will have the victory, and that is mainly due to the fact of the attrition of aircraft that the US has suffered. Thanks for watching, and keep rolling dice.